We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the Brave Co podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bellet. All right, man. Welcome back to the Brave Co podcast. This week, I have my good friend, Doug Wood. I actually should say my growing friend, Doug Wood. Doug, I'm stoked for you to be here this week. We just spent a little bit of time together up in the mountains of Wyoming, shooting guns and riding horses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But, man, I'm so happy to have you with me. Thanks for jumping in.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to finally make this happen. I think you said it just right. A growing friend, because discovered we're very like-minded, and it's been good to get together lately.
Yeah, man. Well, Doug, I just want to tell a little bit about you, and then we're going to jump into your story. You are a fast-paced, high-action, high-momentum guy. You're the CEO of a health and wellness coaching business, author of the best-selling book, Church Boy to Millionaire, co-founder of Valor Global Online School, and you're also a great husband. I know that because I follow you and I watch your wife and I listen to her talk and share honestly. And then you got 3 great kids. So you weren't always successful. You weren't always a, this high momentum, highly successful guy. And I want to go back just a little bit in your story and tell us about your life, where you grew up and what life was like, and then how you got to kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, well, great place to start is our story, because there's so much power in our story, especially as we begin to own our story, both the good and the challenging parts, which those are the times that we grow the most. And I'm definitely in a growing season, right now. But I feel like my life started at 19 years old when I went off to an internship program in Phoenix, Arizona, and I really dedicated a year of my life to God and just gave the whole year to Him, because I didn't know where I wanted to go next. And I think I see a lot of kids today sometimes throwing debt away, or throwing money away at debt while they're still figuring it out. And I'm thankful that I went off to an internship program in Phoenix and dedicated a year of my life to God. And after that year was over, I did come back for a second year leadership format, and that's where I met my wife, Tia. And Tia and I always had a dream to get into business with my father. And my father owned, he started from scratch, an incredible furniture store back in the early 80s, mid 80s in Oregon. And he grew that into a very household name in the Oregon, Washington area, a very successful company by the world standards. And I always wanted to emulate my father in business. And I did that. I went home and I started a company with him, his support, his blessing, and his guidance and his coaching. And I really went all after that. But I really never saw myself, Jay, in full-time ministry. I always wanted to be a business guy that gave, that supported. But I didn't, I felt like at the time, when I left school, I didn't have like a true, couldn't sing. I didn't think I could speak. I didn't know if I was called the kids. There was about 3 positions that you're qualified for years ago. And I was just like, man, I'm done. I'm going to be in business though. And I'm going to dominate the business sector and world and make an impact still in the kingdom that way. And, I found my way 12 years in business, learning a lot, growing a lot, and miserable a lot. And, I kind of, that's where it fast forward. It was about 2010. I was like, I got to do something different. And my wife and I at that time had been married about 10 years. And we knew that we were called to more. We weren't just supposed to be in the furniture business anymore. I mean, despite the upbringing that I was brought up in, I knew that I was 31 years old and I was not living the life that God had called me to be. And there had to be more. And I began to go on a search to find it.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Business is tough for starters. So, I grew up with my dad who owned several businesses, lots of businesses. And I kind of did the opposite. I was like, man, I don't know that I want to do business after watching my dad grind for
Yeah.
20 years. You know, it's rough out there. Um, yeah, that's crazy. Tell me a little bit about like where you're at today, and um, yeah, I'd love to know what
Yeah.
was a transition out of business and into ministry.
Well, that actually has a lot to do with that season. In that season of from 2000 to 2010, uh, I was not successful. I was, if
Mm,
anything, I would feel like I was anything but successful. And whether I was just always in the testing season, but I always felt like there was a stronghold's probably a big word for it, but I always felt like there was this money issue that was over my family. My father
mm,
told me when I got into the furniture business, Doug, there's going to be some good years, but they'll probably be more harder years than not. But each hard year has taught me a lesson. And my father also told me if you make over $100,000 a year, you're doing really well.
yeah.
My grandfather, who is a old pastor, I say old pastor, he was old and he was a pastor for a long time back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Back in the
Always
day.
back in the day, he always told me, be careful, don't chase money. And I, I had this thing that I felt like I came to about the mid 2000s, maybe 2008. I was praying like I'd never prayed before. I was giving away everything I could. And I just always felt like, man, what is this stronghold or what is this generational thing with my family and money? Because my grandfather
Mm,
never broke it. My father never broke it. And here
wow.
I am saying, what is it? And I just began to go on this quest and this search. I was at this incredible conference, this breakthrough conference at this church in Portland called City Bible. And at the end of it, my wife and I decided to give sow some seed into another ministry, but also my furniture business was doing the worst that it had ever been. We were over $250,000 in debt. We were going month to month on this business that, man, it was so bad that I was actually putting payroll on my credit card.
Wow.
Like I wasn't taking a paycheck. I was a couple months behind on my own mortgage, and I was just trying to. And I did. I always kept my employees paid on time, but those are the only people that got paid on time. And through this whole search, I went and got prayed for one night, and we had just refinanced our house, and I pulled out $24,000 to hopefully buy us a couple of months in the furniture business, to where I was just feeling like God was going to bless my business at some point. And I talk about it in the first chapter of my book, but it's called "It's Okay to Quit." And I
Mm,
realized that I needed to quit on Doug's needs and desires, and I just say yes to
mm,
maybe God had a different path for me. And I went up and got prayed a couple months before that. I went
wow.
up and got prayed for, and this guy, he begins to take me through this series. Actually, at a really incredible altar time, and he takes T and I through this series, and he gave this incredible prophetic word about how you're going to do this, and God's going to do this. And I remember like yes, 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 and then I got to remind you, at the time I was 270 pounds, so I was a big boy, had a lot of belly on me, and
Okay.
he grabs my
Okay.
belly, and he says, "This man will no longer go to the refrigerator for comfort. He will, in fact, have a ministry that helps people break the stronghold of food addiction." And I'm thinking, dude, it's clear I'm a food addict. Like, what the heck? Well, that was the only thing that didn't make sense that whole night. Well, it's funny how we sowed that seed. We gave $12,000 that night, half of what I just pulled out. And I didn't know how we were going to
Wow.
make it. I don't even know how another year went by, but it was a year later that I ended up losing 70 pounds, and I got my health right. But it's amazing, when I got my health right, I feel like uh, my spirit man became back alive. And it was like, Tia was just like, man, I got my husband back. Like that's the only thing I could control in that season, was me, and taking control of me, of what entered my mouth. And I took personal control of my health in that season. But with and that was in 2000, late 2010, early 2011. And so I fast forward now, for the last 12 years, I went and focused on helping other people win, starting in their physical health. But what it's led to, and it's opened so many doors, that I actually was able to go in and find the root and the issue, that money, or should I say the lack thereof, was holding me up. And I had to take my power back, and I had to partner with God in creating a kingdom-based business, that was going to be so much bigger and different than the furniture store days. And, for the last 12 years, we've been helping people win physically in their health. Of course, we've gotten into schools. And of course, I wrote the book in 2018, Church Boy to Millionaire, which is a lot of that story of everyone has a money story. And I wrote it. And man, it's freed me up, but it's really more so freed a lot of people up in their story about money.
Man, just so much in there, because it's so hard to pivot. One, if you have a strong father who's on a strong path, it's really hard to pivot out of that shadow, take the family business and bounce out of that. So, learning how to say no, learning how to stop something, where is so incredibly tough. How was that for you? Like, what was your process? Like the mental process and emotional process of, when you started to know, like, okay, I'm doing something, I'm grinding here, I'm believing for breakthrough. And then when did you realize, like, this isn't going to work? I have to do something different.
It was I'd already lost a little bit of weight, but I used to go into my furniture store every single morning and pray over my family and over my business. And I would challenge any of the men or women listening to this, that if you're not spending daily time praying over the direction of your leadership and over the things that your fingers or your voice touches, start doing it. Because that's the only thing I had to hold on to in those seasons. Part of me was praying for the wrong things. I was praying for something to continue to work, but I finally fell to my face, and there's this red carpet in the back of my store, and I was just bawling uncontrollably. And because I was always taught to not be a quitter, like you finish what you start. And I still had a big lease on this building. My lease was $20,000 a month, and I was really behind. I had a personal guarantee on the building, so I couldn't file bankruptcy. I was really down or up a creek. I don't know which one I was. I was just a mess. And I was young. I did this all through my 20s. So my buddies were out, they went off to college or somewhere in the full-time ministry, and they all thought I had it together. And, honestly, Jay, I didn't tell a lot of dudes about it because it's embarrassing when, from the outside looking in, it looks successful. And I was hiding a lot, and I battled a heavy addiction to pornography. I battled a couple times. I never attempted suicide, but I actually got my insurance policy out. And one of the things that kept me from committing suicide was that in the actual life insurance policy that I had, that was for over $1 million, suicide was one of the clauses that it didn't cover. And I'm actually grateful for that clause. I didn't know it was in there, but because I knew that then my family couldn't be taken care of. Like, I was willing to lose my life so my family could win and get out of the mess. But I actually, discovered that wasn't an option. And so, during that time, I just I literally curled up in that fetal position and just said, God, I quit. I can't do it anymore. Like, literally, I cannot do this anymore. And literally, I heard it so clear of day. It was like, great. I've been waiting for you to say this, Doug, because I was done with this furniture store a few years ago. Just been waiting on you. Like, he didn't say it like that, but that's what I heard, man. And I felt this incredible flood and this release. And I immediately, 3 hours later, because then I was scared. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm screwed. And I remember calling Tia at home, and I'm like, babe, I don't know when, but the furniture store is done. I just don't know when it's going to be done, but I've released it to God, and I feel like it's over. She's like, so what are we doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll go work at Taco Bell if I have to, but I want you back. I want the girls back. At the time, they were 2 and 4. I'm like, I just want to be connected again. I just want to, you know what? We started this thing with no money. If we end with no money, and who cares at this point? Like, you want your husband back, and a little bit of a blur after that. But it's amazing, Jay, when you really release your power and you can truly say, God, I'm done. It's going to have to be you.
Yeah.
I know I will say this. I think too many people are actually praying for something to happen and they're not actually taking action and working about it. I call that the God
Yeah.
card. Like, oh, God hasn't released me. God hasn't told me. Well, it's because you haven't done anything. God will match your effort. But in that case, it was a lot of Doug effort and it was maybe 15% God. And it really just needed to be in a season of complete surrender. And literally it was 2000, that would have been late 2009, 2010-ish. Dude, my life exploded for everything good since then. Since I released me, I got out of the way. My finances, my health, my marriage, my work, my relationship with the kids, my impact in this world exploded versus just being tied up in a business that was all about me.
Man, that's crazy. Um, I think that most men are in the same box that you were in, where you want to, you're doing what you know to do. I mean, you're working hard, you're putting in effort, you're grinding. And yet when you look around, man, it feels hard because you're not really successful at any of it. Business is failing, marriage is disconnected, young daughters, got a porn addiction. A lot of guys are in that spot. Knowing how
That's what
to,
some call the American dream now, right? I mean,
Bro.
sadly, it's joked that that's the American dream. In debt, overweight, addicted to porn, go to church on Sunday, and we call it the American life.
Yeah, and guys are just dying on the inside. And that's what I love about what you guys are doing. It's what I love about what we're doing is we gotta stop and get real with God, right? Like you gotta stop and get to a place where you're going, okay, I can't freaking do this. I can't do it. It can't be all on me. But I just want you to unpack, because you're just a master at this, Doug. I want you to unpack for guys who are at that same place. Like they know that they're living a life that is less than what they've been called to. And how do they make a pivot, even practically, into, okay, I want God to take over, and I want God to partner with me. That's actually the real thing, not just God to take over. I want to partner with what God's doing. And how do we begin to make those shifts in our life?
Well, I think it goes back to identity. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could be about. Yeah. But it really goes back to identity. I really felt a strong pull to get into business with my father. And so most of us made a decision off of something that we did in our young 20s or teens.
Yeah.
I would even dare say some people maybe giving words, whether it be prophecy, over somebody, and we're still doing something that either we went to college for, that we set out to do, and we just really never pulled our head up and looked around and just said, first of all, am I enjoying this? Am I operating in my unique ability? Like, do I feel like Doug Wood was put on this earth to run a furniture store? Yes, great. It's awesome. I'm glad I can help people get their furniture. But truly, is Doug at his best as a father? And that's what I would challenge you men listening is, why are you doing what you're doing? And just have a conversation with yourself for a second, because no one's listening. I know we all, some people have the fancy title or the degree, or I've built this many businesses. And yeah, I think you're naturally a builder. But I had to really strip Doug away. And for me, it did start with my flesh and say, I need to take this place of pain, which for me at the time was my physical health, because I saw how much it was holding me up. And I needed to make it my place of reign, to where I literally became my place of power and owning my story. And then what happened was I opened my mouth, and I didn't realize how many other people were looking for something too. And, one of the first times, Jay, I got checked on, is this my ministry? I have so many people that have reached out to me to get healthy, but it's actually unlocked what's going on in the heart. It's unlocked what's going on in the marriage, because, let's face it, everybody's dealing with challenging stress through some type of an addiction. And I think some have more consequences than others, but we all run to something. And also, I
Yeah.
think in the Christian world, I think we've made food uh, a laughing thing or not a big deal.
Yep.
And it unfortunately it's killing, I believe,
It
also
is.
literally the American church, and or at least the American spirit that needs to be alive and well within us. And so that's where for me, I had to look at, am I really called to this? Just because I got into it when I was 21, I'm 31 now. It's
Yeah.
not too late to make a pivot. And what do I need to be doing? What do I want to be doing? What am I good at? And then I just said, now I just need to figure out how to get paid for what I'm good at and what I feel like God has, equipped me with.
Nah, that's super cool. I love it. Taking the first step and saying, what can I truly be powerful over? What is my responsibility? To me makes a lot of sense. And a lot of guys feel sorry for where they're at, right? And the challenge with feeling sorry for where you're at is that you become a victim. And as
Yeah.
soon as you become a victim, you're in prison. And you're in prison by your own admittance. You've taken the power, your power, and given it to everyone else, everything else. My marriage is failing, my business is failing. That's everyone else's fault. And taking back that power and going, okay, my health, my responsibility. My family, it's my responsibility. My relationship with God, it's my responsibility. My attitude is my responsibility. And I think you're right. Like guys stepping up and going, okay, I may not know how to do that, but it's my job to take responsibility of that and take the first steps to move that forward. And I really love the scripture that says a man's gift will make a way for him and bring him before kings. Because I oftentimes think that most men are trying to find out, like, what's the thing I can make the most money at, or what's the thing I can go to college at and figure out. And I'm not knocking college or whatever, or the pursuit of financial wealth. But I love that when you find something that you love to do and you do it with all your might and you do it with God, God takes that gift and then he's able to multiply it. He takes your being responsible with your health and your marriage and your kids, and it goes, okay, I can promote that. I can multiply that. But it takes a guy who's willing to take ownership.
Yeah,
And that's what you did.
absolutely. And I believe that's one of the core values that T and I teach off of and coach off of is personal responsibility. Can you own your stuff? Can you literally, and I'm going to challenge some men right now because I realized for a long time I would kind of say I'm sorry or I would own something, but I would still it would still come with a but. But if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have responded that way. There was still like literally, I couldn't just say, I'm sorry and it won't happen again. Like that's personal responsibility of, look, I own
Yeah.
this. I hate this about myself, but I promise I'm getting better and it will not happen again. And the other side
Yeah.
of personal responsibility that the victim goes to, Jay, is they can say, I'm sorry, and then they go toxic on themselves. I
Yeah.
suck. Maybe I suck as a father. I suck as a businessman. And then all of a sudden, you just went from either hurting or offending, whether it be your wife, your kids, an employee, and then you go victim to where all of a sudden they're coming around you, coddling you. Oh no. And then next thing you know, they're almost apologizing to you. And literally, it's a big
Yeah.
manipulative game that can easily be played. And I had to look at myself at 32 years old and I said, I am not in a good place. But
Yeah.
this will not be my story. I'm going to own. It doesn't matter that my grandfather told me don't chase money. That's all
Yeah.
he was taught. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to also realize if money's so bad, why do they give you about 14 ways to collect it in church? You can text it, you can give in the back, give on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, they ain't gonna keep passing the plates if it's so bad.
Yeah.
And I had to realize, I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, that's the side of the cross that my grandpa. But he gave me so much else, but he just
Yeah.
never got through the money thing. And,
Yeah.
and I had to look at that. I had to look at some of these patterns that I was told. I had to say, wow, somebody told me, my father told me, if you make over $100,000 a year, you made it. It's funny how I always strive to make right at 100, and I could never make any more because you
Yeah.
set your benchmarks and your goals based on what somebody else put on you. And I had to just kind of confront all of those things. I had to throw out, the bad, but I just had to keep the good and say, you know what? No, I'm rewriting my family story around money, and abundance is going to be our legacy. Impact is going to be our legacy.
How did you get, how did you go from like, my marriage is suffering, hurting, into like, okay, Tia and I, we're doing good now? And because there's a big transition from where you were to where you're at. And again, like, so many guys are in, they're on the outside looking at like, okay, I know I was created for more. I know um, that I have more capacity. I just don't know how to make that transition in my marriage and financially, practically. Was there practical things that you did, you and your wife? Like, what did that repentance look like?
Well, the first thing we did when we knew we wanted to change and grow was we took inventory of every relationship,
Hmm.
and every relationship in our life, Jay. And we said, does this add value to us, or are we doing it because we ought to be doing it, or because doing it or hanging out with them because we've been doing it? And, here's
Yeah.
the tough one. Well, tough or not tough. When you begin to set your family and rewrite your family story, it's going to be lonely for a season. And it's not a 2-week process.
Yeah.
We're rewriting this story. And we said, okay, operation number one is God.
Yeah.
He is at the center. Is he in all areas? Number two is, Tia, where are you and I at? And number three, family. And then everything else falls directly under that in order. Here's the first thing we recognized. We had friends in our lives. Some of them were friends that we were in small group with, Jay, that were not adding value to our life. They were lifelong friends. We'd do the church campouts. We'd do the family. We'd even do some
Yeah.
hunting trips. But there's those people when you're sitting around the fire and the conversation just isn't quite the same. It's almost
Yeah.
like you can tell you're on a different path, but it's like, oh, and then you start making excuses for him. Oh, that's just Uncle Joe. Or that's just, oh yeah, he's just kind of that. No, that's not cool anymore. And I realized even on the golf course, some of the times the way people would start talking about their spouse. And Tia would be in girlfriend situations, and the girls are sitting around drinking wine and having some chocolate, and next thing you know, one of them starts going in about their spouse, and then they all started being like, oh, I know, I hate it when so and so. And Tia and I recognize we need pillars around us. And then we're
Yeah.
like, well, who's our pillars? Because some of the pillars that we were looking up to were acting this way. When we started wanting more, you're going to start to recognize more. Remember that, men. When you want more, you're going to start recognizing more. Don't
That's great.
ignore these warning signs, because we understood really quickly that the people that we used to get somewhat marriage advice or advice from were comfortable with their life. To them, I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying that that's all they wanted. Maybe they didn't have access or didn't know anymore. We just were in a pursuit of, no, we want a maximum connected marriage. And so, but we had to work for it. So yeah, sadly, it took us uh, making up stories of why we're not going to be, participating in,
Yeah.
bunko night, or, you look
Yeah.
at these little silly things, but I think those are the unconscious things that you've been doing. It's just like driving a car. You don't even remember the drive because you've done it for so many years. You have to start looking, what are the
Yeah.
areas and the people in your life that you're so unconsciously hanging out with them that you need to consciously wake up and say, are we still on the same pursuit of the same goals? And again, begin to start steering towards the people that what you want. And it will take a season. It took us a long season before we started finding our people. And I can tell you, there's not a ton of them
Yeah.
out there, but you
Yeah.
will find what you're looking for. They're there.
Yeah. It's so true. I love that. I mean, you're really talking about being intentional, right? You're really talking
Mm.
about taking inventory of your life and going, okay, what's bringing me a return and what's not bringing me a return, and starting to weed that out, because you really do only have so much time. And people have a really hard time with the idea that we set limits and we set boundaries. But the truth is like, if you don't set limits and you don't set boundaries with different things in your life, everything from food to how you consume television and entertainment, to, you're not really the master of your life. Everything else and everyone else becomes the master of your life. And it is so hard to have a life that you're proud of, that you actually sit back and go, okay, I'm thriving, when you're living unintentionally, when you're not living intentionally. It's almost impossible. And I think one of the challenges is people hear you talk or they hear me talk and they go, man, he's just hype. That guy's just a lot of hype. Because it sounds like you gotta get your ducks in a row. You've got to cut some ties with things that are, not doing well. You could make more money in your life. You could live more connected. You could feel more free. And people go like, nah. But the truth is, you can do things today, and it starts with being a steward, right? And I was in my son's room, Liam. He's 5 months old, and I was rocking him the other night, and just getting him to go to sleep. And we have this really cool painting in his room, and it's of this valley with different mountains and a big old peak. And it really stuck out to me last night, and God started talking to me about it. And then this morning, he was crying at like 6 a.m. and my wife was tired because the boy just wants to eat at night, which I can't blame him. He's got that good milk. But so I got up with him this morning and I was rocking him, and I got into this chair and he was sleeping. And hey, Braveco men, I am here to tell you about our Braveco testimony book, the Father's Edition. This is chock full of incredible testimonies of God coming through for men, for marriages, for finances. And here's why it's important. In Revelations, it says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And that is what happens when you get other people's testimonies as you get their breakthrough. And so I want you to check out this book. If you want something that you can give to your son, you can give to your father, you can give to a friend that will really help them out in life, this book is it. You can go to braveco.org and pick up your copy today. God started telling me, it's fun when you're having a conversation. God started telling me these things. He was going, man wants confidence, and I give him a challenge. He wants strength, and I give him an object that he has to move. He wants endurance, and I give him a goal that he can't accomplish in a day. And I started to think like, that's true. Like, that's how you get from the valley to the top of the mountain, is not the way that the world's feeding us, right? It's not through sitting back and letting, hoping that someone else takes you there. Like, it's through these trials, it's through the tests, it's through the heavy lifting, it's through taking the things out of your backpack that literally make it impossible to get to the top, like the top of wherever God called you to. We're not talking about ego top. We're talking about responsibility, right? Maximizing your responsibility. And I've watched you from afar, Doug, do that. I've watched you and your wife just remove things that don't actually even make it possible to get past, that first mountain. And I just love it, man. It's from everything from getting the weight off physically, like literally getting the weight off your life, to then, okay, who's influencing me that, man, I'm never going to get to where I'm called to live, not because of them, because of me.
Yeah. And we started doing small things, Jay. When I lived in Oregon, we moved churches and small groups. We moved on the opposite side of town because we realized we were in a part of town that didn't support our goals, both physically and also the mindset of the area. So we moved 10 miles, across town. Then we got to a place where we could live anywhere, and we're like, why do we live in Oregon? And we're like, well, where do we want to live? We want to live in sunshine. We want to live in abundance. And so we put everything in a storage unit and lived out of our car for 6 weeks while we traveled the US until we figured out what part of sunshine we wanted to live in. And so we chose Arizona. So we've never been afraid of doing bold things, because when you get comfortable, a very scary place to be is comfort zone. And every time we would start to settle in or oversettle, we would start creeping back into old habits. I've always said, the devil will find you if you have enough white space on your calendar. So if you have a comfortable calendar, you're going to be falling and finding things that are not for you. And then even it happened. We got a beautiful life here in Arizona. I do. And we share everything with so many people. We have massive retreats out. I have 200-person retreats out of our property here in Scottsdale.
Wow.
Well, we love to just share the blessings God has given us. We love to give back. But we were in Dubai this summer in June. And then we went on to Croatia, and we're sitting on a boat in Croatia. And T and I, part of the reason we wanted to go on this trip was, just obviously we love seeing the world, because we just realized when you get out unplugged, you just see so much and your world gets expanded. And we're sitting on a boat in Croatia, and T and I we've been in a real comfort zone the last couple of months before that. The girls were getting out of school, and we're like, we just need to rock the boat. She's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, we need to move. She's like, leave our property? I'm like, yes. And so literally we moved 20 minutes away into downtown Scottsdale into this high-rise apartment. We're living in a 3-bedroom apartment. Why? Because I recognized I was hiding out in the desert. I was in a comfortable routine. I had my little comfort property, and nobody bothered me out there. You're out kind of in horse country a little bit, which again, God's beautiful earth. But I found Doug was getting dry. He was getting too comfortable. He was falling back into old habits and old patterns. So what do? You got to stay on the front edge, and you got to recognize those things in you. I said, we need to move. And so we rented this apartment, and now we're going to Airbnb, our property out there and just use for special events. But the whole point of that is, men, recognize areas where you're comfort and just go in and start shaking things up. And it starts with you. I would cautiously do this to your family. Okay. Like, be careful, but they'll see it in you. When they start seeing you grow and learn and be innovative, they're gonna be like, I don't know what's gotten into dad, but I like it because he's getting up earlier. He's staying up later. He's more intentional. He's more connected. Like, he's doing stuff. He's not just, succumbing to the patterns of this world. And man, Jay, I've always pushed the boundary lines, and we've tried to. Usually sometimes it's too late, but don't be afraid just to shake things up, man, for a season. It's only a season.
Yeah, it's so true. Man, I love that. I love your style. Here's the thing, guys, when you're listening to Doug's story, like, Doug's built a ton of trust with his family and with his wife. So when he says, hey, let's move, it doesn't completely rock her world. And we should be able to rock our world first before we go and rock everyone else's world. Yep. And so I just love it, man. The complacency it's got to be one of the biggest pitfalls for us as men. If you're not living on a schedule, and let me just preface this by saying, I freaking hate scheduling. I hate administrative stuff, but I found probably 8 years ago, if I'm not living on a calendar, if my time, my money, my effort, my energy can't be seen on my calendar, where am I spending my time? Yeah. What am I saving for? Where am I headed? I'm just so far behind the curve. And getting a regular daily routine, for some guys, that's shaking your life up. Your alarm clock is set. You've got a routine in the morning. You've got a schedule, you got your day scheduled out. That would shake up your life, guys. So Doug, what is your rhythm? What's your daily rhythm? And then what's kind of a weekly rhythm for you just in life? How are you spending your time?
And man, I'm still working on this too. But one thing I have learned is a morning routine is non-negotiable. How you start your day determines everything. And a couple things is the first thing, men, that crosses your lips, you're going to crave more of that day. So try to have something that is nutritious, or drink a glass of water before you go to coffee or something sugary. So I
It's
had to
good.
just start with making sure that my nutrition is in order first thing in the morning. Number
Yeah.
two is what your eyes see, you're going to crave more of the rest of that day. And so one of the first things that I have to make a dedication to do is to put on a podcast, or I have to spend time in the Word for even if it's 10 to
Great.
15 minutes in the morning
Yep.
before anybody else gets up. And I set my worship music on. I don't go right to scrolling, getting on all the stuff on social media. Like take those few moments to get you right. And I do that while drinking a cup of coffee. And then, usually an hour goes by and it's time to get up and go to the gym. And then, then I get down to the gym at 6:15. I'm done with the gym at 7:30. My wife, we have finally built the habit to where we get to work out together. I know that has only been this last year of my life. And, I'm 44 years old. So that's an earned place to be. And I'm so thankful and grateful to have that time with my wife every single day. If we're in town together, we work out together every morning at 6:15. But I have that hour alone before she's up. Okay. So we sometimes connect 15 minutes before going to the gym. Like this morning, it was really cool. She's under a lot of stress. She just wrote a really cool book called Kick Fear in the Face, and her conference is next month. And so she's kind of stressed a little bit right now. And she came out and
That's
she
right.
just stopped and she's just like, babe, would you just pray for me? I'm just feeling the weight of this thing. And so we took extra time this morning to pray together. And then
So
we
cool.
went down to the gym. After the gym, and I kind of then say, okay, the rest of the day, there's probably still too much white space on my calendar, just because I do work from home and I have more flexibility. But
Yeah.
my day is so structured that I've had that me time. I've had that wife time. I've got my body right, my spirit right. Other than that, then I'm seeing my kids off to school and spend a little time with them in the evenings. And so getting that morning routine took some time, Jay, but it has changed everything about me because, again, what you start your day with, body, mind, and spirit, you will crave more of. And so, men, guard what you're hearing, guard what you're seeing first thing in the morning. It's just so important that we set ourselves up to win early.
Yeah, it totally is. I love that. I have to get back on my morning routine. When I tore my meniscus 5 months ago, I had meniscus repair surgery. I was doing jujitsu in the mornings. I transitioned from working out to doing jujitsu, and I tore my meniscus in jujitsu. And God, I've spent 3 months not being able to walk without crutches and stuff. Shattered my my routine. So next week, my workout partner comes back from his hunting trip, and I'm back on the morning grind, which is awesome. It's I'm one of those guys who's not a natural, like I'm not an early guy, but when I keep that, it's awesome. It's the best way to start your day. Yeah, because you're all fired up and ready to go. You already feel successful, which to me is a massive thing, right? Like even if I don't do anything else in my day, it's 6:30 in the morning and I've already been successful, and it just adds that extra momentum to everything that we're doing for the rest of the day. So I love that, Doug.
That's
really
how
cool.
confidence. That's how confidence is built. It's the number one question I get in my DMs because I coach a lot of people around the country. And Doug, how do I get your confidence, or how I build confidence? And I answer it the same all the time. Commit to do one thing tomorrow and just do it. So many of us have good intentions. I think even a lot of Christians are good at this. They're good at kind of like dreaming and goal setting, but they lack commitment. And I call it the hype and hopium. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of hope, but actually, what about doing it? What about doing the work?
Yeah.
And it starts with setting your alarm. Regardless of what time you set your alarm, just get up when it goes off. Now, I know that is like simple 101 stuff, but confidence start going down from day one or from moment one. So if you set your alarm for 6 a.m., don't sit there and beat snooze alarm till 6:30. You already feel like you're dragging and you're failing a commitment that you made yourself day before.
Mm.
If you're a snooze alarm person, great. Just set it at 5:30 and snooze till 6. But commit to one thing and do it well. And that's how that's how you really do it. I started working out a few years ago, and I used to talk about working out in theory, and I would try to, or I'd talk negative about it. I hate working out, but I do it anyway. Well, words have power. So I'm like, no, I'm embracing. I don't love working out yet, but I'm embracing doing it. And hey, if I said I was going to work out for 30 minutes tomorrow, what time am I doing it? And I'm going to commit to it. And that doesn't mean sitting there scrolling on my phone while I'm sitting there in between reps because there's too much phone time. So it's just
Yeah.
building small little wins on top of each other is so simple, but I realize most people aren't doing it, Jay.
Yeah, it's true. I found that one of the most challenging things to do is to start small because we feel like it's so insignificant. And that's my personality. I'm usually an all or nothing type of guy, whatever it is, hunting, fishing, work at home. I do a small house project, and pretty soon I'm like, oh, I've got to finish the whole entire lawn. I got to finish the whole entire yard. And I was reading the book Tiny Habits. I also read the book Atomic Habits, which are pretty much the same. And I love in that book, I don't know if you've read it, but he talks a lot about the psychology of just starting small, getting those small wins. Don't try to win everything at once in your life. Don't try to lose all the weight and change your finances and fix your marriage.
Correct.
and fix your relationship with your kids, because you can only do that for one day and then you're off of all of it, right? And then you broke a bunch of promises to yourself instead of going like, what is one thing, which I love what you said, what is one thing that I can focus on today and I can grow on? What am I going to get the biggest return on? That can be a really challenging thing. But what I love to add to that is to find someone to do it with. And I just think that that's so huge. It's probably one of my biggest things right now is, man, well, actually I'll tell it in like a story. I was on a call, counseling someone who's a pretty famous worship leader, and they were having struggles in their marriage. And we were able to identify where that struggle came from, what was driving it, the triggers around it. And he says to me, man, okay, how do I actually solve this? How do I get rid of this thing in my life? And I said, well, there's two ways to do it. You can go to counseling, which I'm a counselor. It's a good idea. You can go to counseling and you could see that counselor, for a couple months and work on this cycle that's been developed from your childhood. Or you can get a group of guys that you're leading and you guys could all commit to being honest with each other, becoming better husbands, becoming better men. And not only would you solve this issue in your life, but you create a bond, and now you're getting what those guys have. And here's the science behind it, guys. Like the science says that if you have a goal in your mind that you want to accomplish, there's only 5% chance that you'll accomplish it on your own if you just keep it in your mind. If you go tell somebody, if you write down your goal and you go tell somebody and you ask them to keep you accountable, you've just upped your odds by 90% that you're going to accomplish that. But to me, one of the biggest upgrades that you can do in your life is pull men in or pull people in that are like-minded, right? Maybe they're up in a little bit. They're stronger in one area. They're ahead in another area, and you get to use their strength in that area. But then here's the thing: you're not solving your lifelong marriage problem on your own. You're not solving your physical stuff on your own, and you can do that. But I've been doing counseling since I was young, and I'm seeing. Now I'm like, okay, do the individual journey, yes, but do it in the context of a community that's going the same place, because you literally get the strength of everyone else. And to me, that's the best way to do life. It's the best way to change. It's the best way to grow. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to actually go far, go together.
Yep. Yeah,
It's a non-negotiable for me.
And that takes effort, Jay, because
it does.
When you truly want to grow, and a change is a big word, but I think we all desire change. I desire to change. I want to become better than who I was an hour ago and yesterday. So it takes intentionality, especially us as men, because it's so easy. Us, I think the ladies, they're kicking our butts in this. They're communicating and doing a lot more stuff. And, but us men, it takes intentionality. Even me joining you up in the woods of Wyoming a few weeks ago, it was easy to make a decision 5 months before that when I was invited. It was easy even for me at the time to put down the money. When it came time to get the airplane and actually fly there and show up, I had all these reasons why it wasn't the week to do it, and I should push it off. And it took intentionality to go, because all the butterflies start setting in, all the things that we're responsible for. And those are the time us as men have to say, no, this was a commitment you made. It's no different than pushing the snooze alarm. This is a commitment you made. Regardless of what's going on now, your spirit man needs to be in those woods. Maybe Doug, the shooting, learning how to sniper shoot doesn't need to be there, but Doug's spirit needs breath of life breathed into. And Doug, you're going to be there for somebody else. And Jay, that took a lot of intentionality, because even me, I consider myself somewhat accomplished in terms of building on successful habits of successful people. I've been doing this for 12 years. And the more you do it, the more you live by it. But man, this one stretched me. And it just showed me how I have to continue to make these continued efforts to be around other men, and the brotherhood, the fatherhood, to really set this course that us as men up to be strong, good fathers.
Yeah, it's so true. It's not supposed to be lonely at the top, because you're supposed to have a whole bunch of brothers that are beside you, that are running with you, that are lending their strength, that are sharing what they're really going through, that need you and you need them, living this interdependent life. And to me, I really think that is, it's one of the greatest secrets to success, is to find that group, husbands and wives as well. Find the group of friends that are going in the same direction. Guys, find those dudes that are willing to go on the same path. And listen, they don't all have to be CEOs and perfect guys. Like, they just have to have the drive to wake up when that alarm goes off, to be honest, to be better, one step ahead today than they were yesterday. And, this last year, I've added a couple guys into my life that have helped me so much. I got my friend Chris Lamb, who he works out. He lives down the road, works out in his gym every morning. And so that was my initiation into he's like, bro, you don't have any excuse. I work out at 6:00 every morning. Come work out. And I'm like, oh, dang it. And, just different guys like that doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just that are willing to run and partner and move. And, man, I love it. Doug, I love your story, and I love what you're doing in not just the services that you offer, but what you guys are living. And it's just phenomenal. You're such an inspiration for men who have been in hard, broken, challenging places, who have these goals and these aspirations that know, I want to maximize my life. I only get one. I want to live a life that I'm proud of. I want to live a life where I'm not bound financially. I want to live a life where emotionally I feel healthy and vibrant, and physically I feel free. And you're such a great example of what real persistence, real courage, the ability to confront the norm in your life, to make a pivot, make a change, and then to accept, okay, I got to pay my dues. I got to put my time in. I got to earn this. And then now we all get the benefit of seeing your story and the testimony of your story, and knowing, like, guys, you want to know what a life well lived looks like, what a life well stewarded looks like. It looks like that. You can look at Doug and go, there's nothing special about him. There's nothing different that he has that you don't have, that's so unique. You're looking at a man that is fulfilling the words that have been spoken over his life because he's put his effort and energy and focus every day, right? That's the secret. Guys are going, Doug, what's your secret to success? It's every day. It's every day doing the things that you didn't want to do and continuing to steward that momentum. Doug, anything else that you'd add before we close up here?
Well, I think it's easy for anyone listening to this to kind of be like, man, you might see Jay as long down the road, or me. But yeah, I've been practicing this 12 years, man. And it's so, as I kind of mentioned a second ago, Jay, it's hard to stay in the game. It takes intentionality. But men, if you don't even feel like you're in the game, get in the game. Yeah. Take a baby step this week. Like, it literally, and before you go rocking your family's world, we need to do this, I need to do that. Let them just see you making some 1% changes each week. Just make a 1% change tomorrow. Make a 1% change next week. Like, small little things of just getting in the game. Even if for you right now it's just toe dipping, I just want to go deeper with the Lord. I want to go deeper with my kids. I want to go deeper with my wife. I want to go deeper at maybe it's just time to go to some marriage coaching. Because maybe sometimes I realized for a long time, Jay, I was resistant to it. And it's just like, no, for me, a win is just showing up, even though I don't want to be here. I'm just going to maybe go, this could be a piece of the puzzle, and I'm just going to start saying yes more versus maybe another day and make excuses. And so if you're in the game, be intentional about staying in the game, man. If you're not in the game, come on, man. It's time to get in the game. Our kids need us to get in the game. If anything, our kids need us to be in the game. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah. It's so good, man. Doug, would you pray for us?
Brother, I would be absolutely honored to. God, you're a massive, huge God. And I just stop and I say thank you for the tenderness that you are to us as men, and how sometimes we even keep things to ourselves. But you're just there to continue to be our source of strength when we feel like we can't even run to our wife or our friends. And it might be that we're in too deep, or we feel we're in too deep. But God, you're an in too deep God, and you're there to take us deep and deeper with you. God, I just cover this time. And God, I just selfishly even thank you for leading me to Jay and Braveco, to this podcast. I can't even think, as I've wanted to go deeper. Lord, you've led me here to a man and to a curriculum that has got it all laid out. You're just that just I didn't know about it, but you led me here, Father. And I pray that this would continue to just expand into the earbuds and into the speakers of each car that needs to hear it. I pray for every man listening now, God. Let us just be better fathers, better husbands, even better businessmen that are making bigger impact for you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Braveco men, listen, today is a great day. It's not even too late in the day to pick one thing, pick one goal, to humble yourself, to put your ego aside, to be willing to challenge yourself, to be afraid, to push past your fear of failure, or to push past, the discomfort of not wanting to do it. It's not too late today to just pick one of those things and really knock it off the list. It could be making your bed. It could be setting your alarm right now for tomorrow morning. It could be grabbing a book that you're going to commit to read this month. But we want you to join us. We want you to join Doug and I, and to do what we're doing, which is to go every single day to just continue to improve your life, continue to follow the path that God has you, get a group of men that you can run with and move forward. It takes a lot of bravery to do that, but want to invite you guys into that. So Doug, thanks so much for coming on, man. You're such a beast. And I know that there's a lot of guys on here that would love to model their life after you and follow you. You guys can click the links and stuff and just follow. We'll put the links on where they can check you out. Get the book. Get Doug's book, level up your life, get his testimony. It'll be the spirit of prophecy in your life. If God did it for Doug, he'll do it for you. So Doug, thanks so much. Guys, stay brave this week. I'll see you next week. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the Brave Co podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.